Hello, everyone. Welcome to Ladder Daily Digest. Today, from all the way across the Pacific Ocean in New Zealand, we have Ganesh Cherian. Hi, Ganesh. How you doing?
Fabulous. Nice to be here with you.
Tell us about your Mormon story.
Well, I've grown up in Wellington, New Zealand, and my parents joined the church when I was very young, and so I grew up in the church. My parents divorced, and I've lived here pretty much all my life. I served a mission. Obviously, I met a fellow missionary from the States who we ended up getting married some years later,
Oh, yeah.
and
Where was your mission at?
Auckland, New Zealand. So I was very close to home. But my wife is from Seattle, so we've spent quite a lot of time in the States back and forth. And of course, my children are dual citizens and have lived in the States too. So I've got a lot of connection with America, obviously, and that's really fortuitous, seeing as the church is so American. But I've done lots of things in the church, particularly seminary teacher, institute. I was the bishop, and I've had various other callings in Sunday school and the like. So I really have been invested in, what the church has said the gospel is, and made a concerted effort to learn and teach and be versed in what Mormonism has to offer in terms of its proposition, its value proposition, I guess.
That's right. And you've had an interview with John Dehlin on Mormon stories, and we'll provide a link to that in the description so they can find lots of stuff about you, like what your favorite primary song is. Was that a fun?
It was really fun, and I think that it's really interesting, that kind of long format, and telling your story. You get to really delve into some of the special things about people. People are really interesting when you scratch the surface and you get to hear what they like about themselves or what their unique experiences are. I think it's a great way to recognize that we are all people and we've all got a story, and it's probably really interesting if we just ask the right questions.
That's right. I met you at Sunstone 2023 and took an immediate liking to you. You seemed lonely, like a little puppy in the corner. No, just kidding. And so I remember chatting with you and learning more about you. And I said, wow, you should do a Mormon stories. And you said, I already did it this week, or you're going to do it or something like that. I can't remember which one. And so that was kind of fun.
Oh, it was a great opportunity to be at Sunstone. I'd been wanting to go for many years, but just my work schedule had prevented me from doing so. So, and I, especially since becoming a much more nuanced member and looking at the church and its teachings much more critically and much more openly. I was really interested in the varied beliefs and study and research that other people have done and what they've found, because we're all so different and different things resound with us, but also the things that we then dive into and dissect and analyze, those are all quite fascinating.
That's right. We'll say complete or full or real or accurate Mormon history is pretty amazing no matter what.
Yeah, and I truly believe that. I mean, I live that. And I think one of the problems that most people come across is when they start to learn accurate history, obviously it upsets their identity because they've had a different one. And of course, that causes a lot of angst, sometimes some anger. And but past that, you just see you see people as real. Joseph Smith as a real person, Brigham Young as a real person. And like the Mormon stories thing, once you scratch that kind of veneer surface and you get to hear people's real stories, they are incredibly gripping. And of course, Joseph Smith is the founder. And once you find that there's a kind of a different Joseph Smith than you have ever even imagined, and it is wild, it becomes an adventure story rather than this. I would say rather than a model to follow, because Joseph Smith's life was crazy,
That's right.
but fascinating.
We are all humans,
Mm.
and that happens. So, we're here to introduce a new project you have. You've decided to give the lessons, your version, I take it, of the Come Follow Me manual. And that's the church study program for this year, 2024. And interestingly enough, they're doing it on the Book of Mormon, which is integral to Mormonism and to Joseph Smith's story. So what made you think that you would, start this project?
So I've been in the process of writing a biography of Joseph Smith. And when I've looked at Joseph Smith's life, actually the Book of Mormon is a really important data point, because it's his first thing. He hadn't done anything that anybody could, particularly refer back to until the Book of Mormon. It kind of seemed to come out of nowhere, almost miraculous, which, is part of the story, of course. But when you look at the trajectory of his life, you see that the Book of Mormon really encaptures his worldview in 1829, when he was 23 years old. And then things changed quite dramatically as the new church evolved, and he tried to put the things of the Book of Mormon into place. And of course, they didn't work in the real world as well as they did in his imagination. And so he had to change things. And by 1844, when he was killed, the church was quite different than the founding document, which is the Book of Mormon.
That's right. It could be argued that some of Joseph Smith's life is even presented in the Book of Mormon in certain parts.
Absolutely. Well, if if you've ever read a book from an author, a adventure story or a fictional story, or most authors draw on their own experience, particularly for their first work, because that's your life, that's what you know, so that's what you write about. And effectively, that's what I'm trying to show with this project, is because I have done all this work in another slightly adjacent area, I can now pick apart the Book of Mormon on the basis that Joseph created it. And so that's how he created it, what was his content, what was his motivation, how did this play out in the stories of the Book of Mormon and the characters, and how things evolved in the sequence of the dictation. So, how the Book of Mormon is put together. And it shows some really fascinating things. And I think of course, most Come Follow Me commentaries that are going on at the moment are from faithful members who believe the Book of Mormon is literal, that they believe the Book of Mormon is historical. And I hope to present, if Joseph Smith created this, what will we see in the text, and how does that look? And are there some things some markers or some fingerprints that tell us that this is Joseph? And if we know it's Joseph, how can we understand what's being said completely differently? And it's kind of almost like a bit of a experiment. I haven't seen anybody else do something quite like this, but I thought it would be quite fun and a little bit revelatory, but also provide some people, if you're a member of the church and you're a little bit nuanced, and maybe you don't believe the Book of Mormon is literal or historic or ancient, Come Follow Me might be painful, or just, you might go to church because you have no other choice and knock your head against the wall every time someone speaks about the Book of Mormon. So hopefully this is a little bit of an alternative for those people who want to look at the Book of Mormon differently through another lens, and they're willing to consider that maybe Joseph had a lot of influence in it. And what would that mean if you viewed the Book of Mormon from that perspective, and how interesting would it get?
And it's basically just additional information. You know, we learn from all types of stories. You know, in America, we have Paul Bunyan. I was telling somebody that we have stories from President Abraham and George Washington's lives that I, as a school kid, heard. And then I grew up and found out that they probably didn't happen. There's no actual evidence. More likely, somebody just invented a story to help show and describe the type of person, like Honest Abe Lincoln, or what a great guy George Washington was, and it was good to get him to be the president, you know. And even like the parables of Jesus, he doesn't say there actually was a man from Samaria who was walking. Believe me, check the records. He said he talked in parables, and so you can learn things from things that aren't necessarily either fact or historical accuracy. We have Aesop's fables that we learn from, Beatrix Potter, and so there's lots of things you could still learn that's good. But if your learning is based on Harry Potter was an actual person, you're not going to get much, or you're going to be disenchanted when you find out about you know, the author and you know, stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of explanatory power in viewing the Book of Mormon this way too. You can understand what's happening to Joseph in the moment, and how that's affecting the text, and it gives you a huge amount of empathy and for him, but his surroundings and what he's dealing with, and so it's almost like a it's just it's being able to get to see behind the scenes of the creation process and understand how things are being made in the moment. And I think that's yeah, that means that you understand what's going on, and you have a great deal of, maybe it's a little bit of seeing the magic trick and understanding, you know, how it works. But there's, you know, we like the wonderment, but we also at some point in our lives want to know, how does it actually fit together? And I think that that's really powerful for people's psyche to heal in lots of ways too, because I think if we've looked at it a particular way and we felt maybe even betrayed if it doesn't add up now, this might be a great way to reclaim that idea of Joseph as a person in our lives that we can relate to but understand better.
And I understand that the lessons are, there are 4 lessons per month, but actually only like 2 are presented in church in Sunday school every other week. And then the family's supposed to study at home the ones that aren't presented. Although my brother teaches Sunday school in Arizona, and he says they pretty much just cover whatever the last lesson is plus the one that's that week.
Yeah, which
And
means you're
so,
probably not going to get in much depth either, right? You're just kind of glossing over some points.
so you're gonna do every single lesson so that people can either use it as a home study guide for their own home lesson or as prep for attending Sunday school.
Correct. And they're short, right? 3 to 4 minutes on each of the chapters. So, you know, it's not onerous. Hopefully, you know, thoughtful. Just give you a bit of background information, dissect some of the things that are in there, and maybe even some of the things that are missing. I think we often, it's really easy to see what's on the page, but it's really interesting to know what's happening behind the scenes, or is not there for whatever reason. Those things are really interesting.
And you're presenting them on TikTok and then merging a few together so that you can have a YouTube episode.
Correct. So each day I've done a TikTok, and then at the end of the week I put them all together and make them available on YouTube so you can listen to them. And it works out to be about half an hour all up for a week. And you know, if you listen to me on double speed in your car on your way to work, hopefully it's you know, it's not onerous.
So my son told me that TikTok is seeing the value of longer format videos, and they're actually going to start encouraging people to do longer formats. And I even heard that they want people to start doing horizontal instead of the vertical with the camera angles, so that people can also go to like a TikTok app on their TV and watch them on the wide screen. So those are changes that might change how you do your presentations, but you'll be able to choose whether to keep on doing the same format or put in the new formats that they recommend.
Wow, that'll be fascinating, and that's something I find a little. I mean, it's a little tricky, isn't it? Transferring from TikTok through to YouTube, it doesn't translate as well, visually. And fortunately, my stuff really isn't that visual. It's more listening. You don't necessarily have to look at me while I'm explaining these things. I do often put some background receipts, but I try and make it simple, easy, and you can always ask me questions if you want the sources. So
that's right. People will be able to share feedback in the comments and be able to maybe interact with you about them as you go. Well, that sounds exciting.
It is, and it's fun. And the one thing I like is that feedback, because people see things that I don't see. They mention them in the comments. They ask questions about things, and oftentimes that means you can, I'm learning too, and that's something that I'm really enjoying. When people bring up things, I'm like, oh gosh, of course that's there, and you can see them. And we all have our lenses that we look at things and maybe don't see everything that's going on. So it takes a bit of a team.
I remember being in school and like finally getting a concept or learning a lesson and patting myself on the back like, wow, I just learned something. So we every day we can learn things. My motto lately has been, if we have full disclosure for real estate and informed consent for medical services, why not where eternity is involved? And your program could be one way to get more information that people might not have heard, and it could either add to their testimonies or it can cause them to start to question things around them, and that's good. I think I posted at some point, or somebody said once that if you believe the same things as a 40-year-old that you did as a 20-year-old, you haven't grown. And so let's all grow together and watch Ganesh's presentation of the Come Follow Me. I'm teasing this as the Kiwi Come Follow Me because, if anything, you just have to like the accent, if you're American, right? So anyhow.
Well, fortunately, I put subtitles on because I'm worried that people might not necessarily get all the words I'm saying.
That's right. Subtitles are good. All right. Well, thanks, Ganesh, for talking with me. We're excited to see what happens throughout this year, and we look forward to even more from you. We'll have you on in a few months when the book comes out.
Excellent.
Bye-bye, everybody. Oh, and everybody, don't forget to like and subscribe, and do the same thing when you watch Ganesh's YouTube show or the TikToks if you catch those. All right. Have a good new year.